Ambassador Jay walked down the long hallway of the Galactic Council building. His shoes made soft sounds on the shiny floor. In his hands he held a small tablet with some very important information. The tablet showed a law that many aliens did not like. The law was called Human Exclusivity Clause 847 Delta. The law was simple but very powerful. It said that only humans could talk to bad people who took hostages. No other alien species in the galaxy was allowed to do this job. When new alien diplomats heard about this law, they got very angry. They thought it was not fair. They said humans were getting special treatment that they did not deserve. But Jay knew the real story. He had lived through the dark times before this law existed. He had seen what happened when other species tried to handle hostage situations. It was always a disaster. Jay remembered the first big failure. It happened with the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrians were very smart. They used math and logic for everything. They thought they could solve hostage problems with numbers and calculations. When bad people took hostages at Kepler Station, the Zephyrians sent their best negotiators. The Zephyrian team looked at the situation like a math problem. They counted how many hostages there were. They calculated how much each hostage was worth. They figured out the chances of saving everyone. Then they did something terrible. They decided that losing 15 people was okay if it would stop future attacks. They were willing to let those 15 people die because their math said it was the smart thing to do. The hostages heard this plan. They became very scared and angry. The bad people became more violent. In the end, 23 people died instead of 15. The Zephyrian math had been completely wrong. After the Zephyrian failure, other species wanted to try. The crystalline hive thought they had a better idea. The hive people could read minds with their telepathic powers. They believed they could know exactly what the hostage takers were thinking. This would make negotiation easy. At Proxima Colony, hive negotiators tried to use their mind-reading powers. But the criminals were smarter than expected. They had learned how to block their thoughts from telepods. They built mental walls in their minds. When the hive negotiators tried to read their minds, they hit these walls and got hurt. The mental feedback was so strong that 3 negotiators fell into comas. The hostage situation became much worse. Every alien species tried to help with hostage problems. Every species failed in their own way. The Crothri were warriors who only understood fighting. When they tried to negotiate, they always ended up starting battles instead. Many innocent people died because the Crothri could not stop themselves from fighting. The Ethereals were different. They could feel the emotions of other people very strongly. When they tried to help with hostage situations, they became overwhelmed by all the fear and anger around them. They would start crying and shaking. They could not think clearly because they felt too much pain from everyone involved. The architects were ancient and very wise. They liked to think about problems for a very long time before making decisions. When there was a hostage crisis, they would spend days or weeks studying every detail. They would make huge plans that covered thousands of years into the future. But hostage situations needed quick action. People would die while the architects were still thinking. The traders were practical people who thought about money and business all the time. When bad people took hostages, the traders would immediately calculate how much each hostage was worth in money. If the ransom was more expensive than the hostage's value, the traders would simply walk away. They would leave the hostages to die because it was not good business to pay too much. Jay walked into the big meeting room where alien representatives were arguing about the human law again. A Zephyrian robot was complaining in its mechanical voice. It said the law was not fair and showed bias toward humans. The robot did not understand why human success rates should matter more than equal treatment. An ethereal representative was glowing with angry emotions. The translucent alien was upset about the Zephyrian comment. It remembered how the Zephyrian calculations had led to so many deaths in the past. Jay sat down and turned on his holographic display. The display showed numbers that told a very clear story. Before the human law was made, only 12 out of every 100 hostage situations ended well. That meant 88 groups of hostages died or got badly hurt. It was terrible. After humans took over all hostage negotiations, the success rate became much better. Now 87 out of every 100 situations ended with everyone safe. The difference was huge and impossible to ignore. Jay spoke quietly, but his voice carried across the entire room. He said the law did not exist because humans were better than other species. The law existed because humans were different from other species in important ways. Each alien species was very good at certain things, but these same strengths became weaknesses during hostage situations. The Zephyrians were too logical. The Hive relied too much on telepathy. The Crothri were too violent. The Ethereals felt too much emotion. The architects thought too slowly. The traders cared too much about money. Humans were strange because they could be many different things at the same time. They could be logical and emotional. They could be kind and tough. They could change their approach quickly when one method was not working. This flexibility made them very hard to predict, which was exactly what made them good at dealing with dangerous criminals. The room became quiet as the aliens thought about Jay's words. The numbers did not lie. Human negotiators saved lives that other species could not save. Dr. Yuna stood in front of a large room full of alien beings. She was nervous because she had to share some difficult truths about why humans were the only ones who could handle hostage situations well. Her research had taken many years to complete, and the results were not pleasant for most species to hear. She pressed a button and a big holographic screen appeared in the air. The screen showed pictures and videos from many different hostage crises that had happened across the galaxy. Each crisis had been handled by different alien species, and each one had ended badly. Every species tries to solve hostage problems using their natural strengths, Dr. Yu began. Her voice was steady even though she knew her words would upset many aliens in the room. But these strengths become weaknesses when dealing with desperate criminals. The first video showed a Crothry military commander at the New Geneva embassy. The Crothry looked like giant lizards with sharp teeth and claws. They were born warriors who solved every problem with fighting. In the video, the Crothry commander was shouting at the criminals inside the building. "Surrender now or face honorable death in battle," the commander roared. He could not understand why the criminals did not want to fight him directly. To the Crothry, any conversation or negotiation was a sign of weakness. Real warriors should fight, not talk. The criminals inside the embassy became more frightened and angry when they heard the death threats. They started hurting the hostages to show they were serious. The Crothry commander saw this as a challenge to battle and ordered his soldiers to attack the building. When the fighting ended, most of the hostages were dead. Dr. Yu changed the video to show an ethereal negotiator. Ethereals looked like beings made of light and mist. They could feel the emotions of everyone around them very strongly. This usually helped them understand other people, but during hostage situations, it became a terrible problem. The ethereal negotiator had tried to help at Paradise Station, where criminals had taken over a shopping center. As soon as the negotiator arrived, she began to feel all the fear, anger, and desperation from everyone involved. The hostages were terrified. The criminals were angry and scared. The families waiting outside were crying and panicking. All these strong emotions hit the ethereal like a giant wave. She could not separate her own feelings from everyone else's feelings. She started glowing brighter and brighter as the emotional pressure built up inside her. Finally, she collapsed on the ground, shaking and unable to think clearly. The other ethereals had to take her away, and the hostage situation continued without any help. "Now watch this," Dr. Yu said, showing a video of an architect negotiator. The architects were very old and wise aliens who looked like tall, thin beings made of stone and metal. They were incredibly smart and could think about very complex problems for a very long time. The architect at Titan Base had approached the hostage situation like a giant puzzle. He wanted to understand everything perfectly before taking any action. He studied the psychology of each criminal. He analyzed the building's structure. He created detailed plans for every possible outcome he could imagine. The problem was that the architect spent 47 hours just thinking and planning. During all that time, the hostages were getting hungry, thirsty, and more frightened. Some of them were sick and needed medicine. The criminals became more desperate as time passed. When the architect finally finished his analysis, 2 hostages had already died from medical problems. Dr. Yu showed more examples. The traitors were practical aliens who looked like small gray beings with big eyes. They thought about everything in terms of money and business deals. When criminals took hostages at Research Station Alpha, the traitor negotiators immediately calculated how much each hostage was worth economically. The hostages were mostly scientists and researchers. The traitors decided that these people did not generate enough money to justify paying a large ransom. They also calculated that training new scientists would be cheaper than paying the criminals' demands. So the traitors simply walked away from the negotiation, leaving the hostages to die. Commander Tay stood up from the back of the room. He was a human with scars on his face from many years of dangerous work. He had seen these failures happen with his own eyes, and the memories still made him angry. "Show them the Vega Prime recordings," he said in a quiet but firm voice. The holographic screen changed to show security footage from a space station. A group of Zephyrian terrorists had taken 200 people hostage. The Zephyrians were robot-like beings who made all decisions using pure logic and mathematics. The terrorist leader was very smart. He had studied how other Zephyrians thought and acted. When the Zephyrian negotiation team arrived, he was ready for them. Every logical argument they made, he had a logical counter-argument. Every mathematical solution they offered, he had already calculated and rejected. Both sides spoke in numbers and calculations. They discussed probability percentages and risk assessments. But no one talked about the human feelings involved. No one considered the fear of the hostages or the desperation that had driven the terrorists to take such extreme action. The standoff lasted 6 days. Both sides were playing the same logical game and neither could win. Finally, the terrorists decided that their mathematical models required them to start killing hostages to prove they were serious. 17 innocent people died because both sides were too logical to find a human solution. Doctor, you showed one more video, this one of a human negotiator handling a similar situation. The human woman seemed almost crazy compared to the logical aliens. She told personal stories about her childhood. She asked the criminals about their families. She switched between emotional appeals and logical arguments without any clear pattern. To the alien observers, the human's approach looked completely random and unscientific. But the crisis ended in only 8 hours with no deaths at all. You see chaos, Doctor, you explained to the confused aliens. But that chaos is humanity's greatest strength. Humans can think and feel at the same time. They can be logical 1 minute and emotional the next. They can change their entire approach instantly if something is not working. This makes them impossible to predict or prepare for. The room was quiet as the aliens processed this information. The evidence was clear, but it was difficult for many species to accept that their greatest strengths were actually weaknesses in these situations. The loud alarm bells rang through orbital station Delta 7. The sound was so loud it hurt people's ears. Gene was already running toward the problem area before the announcement was finished. He was the station's best negotiator, and everyone knew that when the alarms rang, Gene would be needed. "We have a big problem in Research Lab 7, came the voice over the speakers. 6 Crothry extremists have taken 14 researchers hostage. They want us to free their war criminal, General Bloodfang. If we do not do this, they will start killing people in 1 hour. Gene arrived at the scene and saw the usual panic that happened when different alien species tried to handle a crisis together. The Zephyrian security chief was typing numbers into his tablet, trying to calculate the best solution using math. The ethereal medical officer was becoming transparent because she was feeling too much emotion from everyone around her. The architect station commander was writing a very long report about all the different ways to handle the situation. "Sir, we should attack the lab right now," said the Crothry security lieutenant. His lizard-like face showed his sharp teeth as he spoke. "Fast and strong action will solve this problem quickly." "That will get everyone killed," Gene said, stopping the lieutenant from making plans. Gene knew that the hostage-takers were Crothry military veterans. These were proud warriors who valued honor and strength above everything else. They expected either a glorious battle or a noble death. Normal talking would bore them. Emotional begging would make them think humans were weak. Logical arguments would just make them more proud and stubborn. "Connect me to the lab's communication system," Gene ordered. Gene speaking to the unknown warriors in Research Lab 7. "I guess you have names, but you probably want me to call you something scary like Death Dealer or Bone Crusher, right?" Everyone was shocked by Jin's casual and almost rude way of speaking. The hostage-takers were quiet for a moment because they had not expected this approach. "This is Warrior Prime Scar," came an angry growling voice. "We demand that you—" "Yeah, I heard what you want," Gene interrupted, sounding bored. "General Bloodfang, right? I read his file. The guy killed 300 innocent people on Kepler 9. He was a real monster. I am curious though, did you actually serve under him in battle?" There was a pause. "We served the Crothry Empire with great honor." "That is not what I asked you, Scar. Did you personally fight alongside Bloodfang?" "We served the cause of—" "Because if you did serve with him, you would know that Bloodfang killed his own soldiers when they questioned his orders. Remember Warrior 2nd Grok? What about Warrior Prime Thane? Do those names mean anything to you?" The alien observers watched in amazement and horror as Gene continued his strange approach. He was not following any rule book or training manual. He was being unpredictable, personal, and sometimes even insulting. No negotiation school taught this method. "Here is what I think, Scar. I think you are young warriors who got excited about some romantic ideas about the old days. I think you have never actually killed anyone before, and I think you are very scared right now because you have trapped yourselves in a situation you cannot escape from. We are not afraid." The roar came through the speakers so loudly that everyone in the hallway could hear it. "Good." Gene responded happily. Scared warriors make terrible decisions. Now here is something interesting, I have an offer for you. You want to prove your warrior honor? Fine. Let's do single combat. Me versus your strongest fighter. If I win, you surrender and let everyone go. If your champion wins, I will personally ask my superiors to move Bloodfang from the civilian prison to a military prison where they might not execute him. The Zephyrian security chief's robot voice made clicking sounds. Negotiator Jean, this approach has a 73.6% probability of failure based on my calculations. Be quiet, Jean said calmly, never looking away from the lab door. For 10 minutes, there was loud discussion in the Crothry warrior language behind the closed lab doors. The harsh growling and roaring sounds made everyone in the hallway nervous. Finally, Scar's voice came back through the speakers. You would risk your own life for people you do not even know? That is what humans do, Jean replied simply. We are stupid that way. Another long pause. Then, something unexpected happened. The human speaks with true honor. The lab doors opened slowly. The 14 researchers walked out safely, looking scared but unharmed. The 6 Crothry warriors came out after them, putting down their weapons and raising their hands to show they were surrendering. But before the security teams could arrest them, Warrior Prime Scar walked directly to Jean. Human Jean, the tall, scary-looking alien said formally, your offer showed the spirit of a true warrior. We surrender to your honor, not to your weapons. As the crisis teams cleaned up the situation and took the surrendering Crothry away, the Zephyrian security chief approached Jean with his tablet full of calculations. I need you to explain something, the robot said. Your negotiation strategy does not appear in any manual. Your psychological approach goes against 17 established protocols. How did you calculate that such an unusual method would succeed? Jean shrugged his shoulders and for the first time he looked tired. I did not calculate anything. I just talked to them like they were people instead of problems to be solved. The other alien observers looked at each other with confusion. They could not understand how Jin's chaotic rule-breaking approach had worked so well. They had expected logical steps, careful planning, and scientific methods. Instead, they had seen something that looked almost like madness but had saved 14 lives. Jean walked away, leaving the aliens to puzzle over what they had witnessed. He had shown them something that their species could not easily understand, the human ability to throw away all the rules and simply connect with other beings on a personal level, even in the most dangerous situations. The crisis started at 3:47 in the morning when all the main lights in the Galactic Council chambers went dark. Red emergency lights came on, making scary shadows dance on the walls. Armed figures came out of hiding spots all around the big meeting room where the most important aliens in the galaxy were sleeping. Listen carefully, council members, said the leader in a cold, mechanical voice. I am Logical Construct Prime 1 and you are now our prisoners. We want the Human Exclusivity Clause 847 Delta to be destroyed immediately. We also want all human voting rights removed from council matters forever. Among the frightened hostages was Ambassador J and representatives from every major alien species. The situation was very strange and ironic. The humans were trapped in a hostage situation, but they could not negotiate their own freedom because of the very law that made them the galaxy's only hostage negotiators. Outside the locked chambers, emergency teams gathered quickly. Dr. Yuna worked with station security while Commander Tay studied the tactical situation. The hostage takers had positioned themselves perfectly, using the council members as living shields while keeping clear views of all the doors and windows. We need Jean to handle this, Commander Tay said firmly. Jean is on medical leave after the Sigma Station incident, Dr. Yu replied with worry in her voice. He handled 17 hostage situations in a row and had a complete breakdown from exhaustion. Then get me whoever is available right now. That would be Negotiator Min. Min arrived within minutes, but his young face showed how nervous he felt. At 28 years old, he was the youngest certified negotiator in human service. Now he had to face the most difficult hostage situation in the history of the galaxy. As he read the intelligence reports, Min felt his confidence disappearing. The hostage takers were not ordinary criminals or desperate people. They were Logical Construct Prime 1 and his team of tactical analysts. These Zephyrians had spent months studying every human negotiation technique ever used. They had analyzed every successful resolution and built countermeasures for every approach humans had ever tried. They know exactly how we think, Min said to himself quietly. They have predicted every move we might make. Through the communication system, Logical Construct Prime 1's mechanical voice echoed through the building. Human negotiators rely on emotional manipulation, psychological pressure, and unpredictable behavior patterns. We have prepared responses for all documented human tactics. Your species' supposed advantages have been neutralized. Min closed his eyes and felt the enormous weight of 800 lives pressing down on his shoulders. Every species in the galaxy was represented in that chamber. If he failed, it would not just be a diplomatic disaster, it would prove that humans were not special after all. Then, in a moment of clarity that would later be studied in negotiation schools across the galaxy, Min made a decision that no computer algorithm could have predicted. He walked up to the main entrance of the council chambers, raised his hands high to show he had no weapons, and turned on the communication system. Logical, construct Prime 1. This is human negotiator Min. I am asking for permission to enter the chambers as an additional hostage. Complete shocked silence filled the command center. Dr. Yu grabbed his arm tightly. Min, what are you doing? This is insane. Something unpredictable, he replied simply. Then he spoke into the communication system again. I am not coming to negotiate with you. I am not coming to trick you or manipulate you. I just want to talk with you. Being to being. About fear and loneliness and what it feels like when nobody understands you. For the first time since the crisis began, logical construct Prime 1's response was delayed by several seconds. His mechanical brain was trying to process this completely unexpected development. This approach does not appear in any documented human negotiation tactic, he finally said. Because it is not a tactic, Min said, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber as the heavy doors slowly began to open. It is just what we do when we do not know what else to do. Min walked into the council chambers with his hands visible and empty. The armed hostage-takers pointed their weapons at him, but something about his body language, vulnerable, genuine, afraid but determined, seemed to confuse all their prepared responses. Logical, construct Prime 1, Min said, speaking directly to the leader. Can I call you one? I know that is not how Zephyrian society works, but names are important to humans. That designation is acceptable, came the mechanical reply. State your purpose for being here. I do not really have one, Min admitted honestly, sitting down cross-legged on the cold floor. I mean, obviously I want everyone to go home safe and sound. You, me, all these scared diplomats. But to be completely honest, I am terrified. I have absolutely no idea what I am doing right now. The honesty was so raw and real, so completely different from every hostage negotiation protocol ever written, that even the frightened alien hostages stopped their quiet crying to listen to this strange human. I have studied your species extensively, Min continued in a conversational tone. Logic-based society, emotion is considered inefficiency, all decisions made through mathematical analysis. It must be incredibly lonely to live that way. Loneliness is an inefficient emotional response, one replied, but there was a small hesitation in his mechanical voice that had not been there before. Is it really though? Min asked gently. I mean, you have taken all these important people hostage because you feel like your people are not being heard or respected. That sounds exactly like loneliness to me. You want recognition, respect, a place at the table where the big decisions get made. That is not inefficient, that is just what it means to be alive and want to matter. For the first time since entering the chamber, logical, construct Prime 1 moved from his carefully calculated position, taking a step closer to this strange human who sat completely exposed and vulnerable in the center of the room. Min sat on the cold floor of the council chambers, looking up at logical, construct Prime 1. The Zephyrian leader had moved closer, which was not part of his original plan. Min could see that his honest approach was having an effect, even though he had no idea what he was really doing. You know what's funny? Min said, still speaking in that same gentle, conversational tone. Everyone thinks humans are good at this job because we're clever or tricky. But that's not really true. We're good at it because we're broken. Explain this concept of being broken, one said. His mechanical voice was quieter now, less certain than before. We feel too much and think too little. Or we think too much and feel too little. Sometimes we do both at the same time and confuse ourselves. Min laughed softly. Right now, my brain is telling me this is a terrible idea and I'm going to get everyone killed. But my heart is telling me that you're not really a bad person, just someone who's tired of being ignored. The alien hostages looked at each other with confusion. They could not understand why this human was being so vulnerable and honest with dangerous criminals. It went against every logical approach to crisis management. We are not ignored, one stated, but his voice lacked the firm conviction it had carried earlier. We are simply undervalued by the current system. See? That's loneliness, Min said with a small smile. When you're really good at something important but nobody seems to care or notice. When you have valuable ideas but everyone talks over you in meetings. When you follow all the rules perfectly, but somehow the rewards always go to someone else. One was quiet for a long moment. His mechanical brain was processing emotions and concepts that Zephyrian society had taught him to ignore as inefficient. Our calculations are always correct, one said slowly. Our logical processes are flawless. Yet human negotiators achieve better results through chaos and unpredictability. This creates frustration. Of course it does, Min agreed. You work harder, think more carefully, and follow better methods. But humans get the credit because we're lucky enough to be unpredictable. That would make anyone angry. For the next 2 hours, something unprecedented happened. Min did not use any established negotiation techniques or psychological pressure tactics. He simply talked with one about life, feelings, and what it meant to be misunderstood. He asked about Zephyrian society, about the beauty of pure logical thinking, about what it felt like to make decisions without emotional interference. Min talked about his own childhood, growing up as the son of diplomats who were always traveling to different planets. He described the pressure he felt every day, knowing that people's lives depended on his ability to say the right words. He admitted his fear that he was not smart enough or experienced enough for such an important job. One found himself describing concepts that his people had no words for. He talked about the strange emptiness that came from making every decision through mathematics. He mentioned the odd longing he sometimes felt for something beyond logical certainty. He described the isolation of belonging to a species that had eliminated the very emotions that helped other beings connect with each other. We sought to prove that human negotiation methods could be defeated through proper preparation, one finally said. His voice was much quieter now, almost thoughtful. But you have not used any negotiation methods. You have simply existed in the same space as us. Sometimes that's all anyone really needs, Min replied gently. Sometimes just knowing that someone cares enough to sit with you in the darkness is more powerful than any clever argument or logical solution. The other Zephyrian hostage-takers had been listening to this conversation with growing confusion. Their leader was supposed to be following the plan, not having philosophical discussions with the enemy. But they could see that something important was happening, even if they could not understand what it was. We have made an error, one said suddenly. His words surprised everyone in the chamber. Our goal was to prove Zephyrian superiority in crisis management. But this human has not managed anything. He has simply cared about our concerns without trying to fix them or argue against them. Min nodded slowly. I can't fix the unfairness in how the galaxy treats different species. I can't change the fact that humans get special privileges that seem illogical. But I can listen to you and acknowledge that your feelings are valid, even if I disagree with your methods. The surrender did not come with dramatic speeches or tactical defeats. It happened quietly, almost naturally. One simply looked around at the frightened hostages, then back at Min and said, We yield not to human superiority in negotiation, but to human willingness to share in our loneliness. 6 months later, Ambassador J stood once again in the same council chambers. The walls had been repaired and new security measures were in place. The quarterly review of Human Exclusivity Clause 847 Delta was happening, but the mood was completely different now. The law remains in effect, announced the ethereal representative, her translucent form glowing with calm emotions. Not because humans are better negotiators than other species, but because they possess a unique form of unpredictability that comes from their contradictory nature. The Zephyrian delegation was now led by reformed logical construct one, who had chosen to keep a modified version of his original name. Humans can think with logic and emotion at the same time, he added. They can hold opposite thoughts in their minds, change their personalities to match their audience, and form genuine connections even with those who oppose them. This makes them valuable in crisis situations where other approaches fail. Jay smiled as he watched the newest group of human negotiators receiving their final training. Instructor Min stood in front of them, no longer the uncertain young man who had walked into that chamber months ago. His experience had given him confidence, but also wisdom about the responsibility he carried. Remember this above everything else, Min told his students. The moment you think you have all the answers, you become predictable. The moment you become predictable, you lose your ability to help people. Don't try to be perfect negotiators. Just try to be genuinely human. The law continued to exist because sometimes, in a universe full of logical aliens and predictable patterns, the galaxy needed people who could ignore every rule book and simply care about everyone involved. Humans succeeded not because they were smarter or more skilled, but because they refused to stop seeing everyone as real people with real feelings, no matter how dangerous or difficult the situation became.